if you want to get into horror stories here already, but this was a horror story from day one. She got in a fight with her boyfriend and lit his clothes on fire.
One property, 8 months of no rent, and a 3 a.m. call from the fire department.
Just burnt her to the ground. They ended up burning the building to the ground. Now I'm refunding last month's rent. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out what my rights and responsibilities are and what the tenant's rights and responsibilities are. I didn't contact the city. I didn't do my due diligence on the basement unit. I found out that it's not in fact a fourplex. It was a triplex with an illegal basement unit. At that time, I think I used the realtor form for my lease. It was terrible, right? But that property has paid dividends from day one.
What's one risk you take again, even knowing that it didn't work out?
I don't think I would really change anything. Would I do the same thing now that I did then? Absolutely not. But it's that process, it's that learning process that sets you up for the future. And it's becoming more and more clear to me that freedom is built through finding opportunities that are scarce. So again, yeah, I wouldn't change anything, but I would do a lot different.
Most people would have walked away. Jonathan didn't. The building burned. The lease was broken. The numbers didn't add up, but he stayed. He paid attention to what went wrong and got better. Because freedom doesn't come from doing it perfect. It comes from staying in the game. Let's get into it. So, Jonathan, can you walk us through what drew you into that first deal and why real estate is still part of your life today?
Man, so real estate has always been an interest of mine. The reason why I started, I guess, is a good friend of mine. And I'm going back to when I'm a teenager. I'm 18, 19. Good friend of mine. He owned a construction company. His dad owned a construction company. And so they had rental properties the whole way through his life as he was growing up. And so we turned 18, 19. Everyone's going to the bars. This guy buys a duplex, an undervalued duplex for something like 70 grand, right? And he's nights and weekends, we're over there, we're working on it. So I'm helping him with it, rather than drinking at the bars. We're out there, we're having a couple of beers, but we're demoing the place, we're building it, and it's turning out great, right? So it was from a young age, I just kind of saw the value that you can create through real estate. We rented it, worked on it, and then after a while, he's renting it out and he's going through tenant issues and this and that. And what I quickly learned from him was that, yeah, okay, you can find a good deal and you can execute well, but if you don't properly, treat it as a business and properly screen your tenants, you can run into a host of issues there too. So I saw the contractor side of it, like the deal side of it, and I also saw what goes wrong when you don't screen your tenants properly and things like that. So it took me a little bit, but I eventually, jumped in and started by buying a triplex. Bought a triplex in Fort Erie, which is at the south end of the Niagara region, and that one was just it was value add, but there wasn't a whole lot to do to it. There was, I had to insulate, I had to put in some heaters, things like that, but it was essentially trial by fire. We just kind of started with that and then kind of snowballed from there, right? It was essentially, it was learning as I go.
Got it. Well, the one thing I was going to say is, and most people aren't exposed to this, is before you even jumped in, you got some good experiences and lessons learned, which vastly fast tracks your journey because you don't have to necessarily be making those mistakes yourself. So you see some things to do, some things not to do. Your expectations are set. So it's not just like, oh, real estate is all glamorous, managing tenants is all easy. You get to see both sides of the equation, which helps set you up for when you initially get started. Of course, you're still gonna, like you said, trial by fire. You're still gonna have those experiences and mistakes you learn along the way yourself, though. But yeah, what a journey. Okay, so you got into that triplex. You had a little bit of work that was needed on it, nothing too crazy, and you got that rented out. How did things progress from there?
Yeah. So at that time, again, I was very, very fresh. I didn't know exactly what to look for in a tenant. So That building actually, it was being rented when I bought it. It was there was already a couple tenants in it. There was a bit of turnover, but it was being filled by new Canadians, new immigrants to Canada. So basically, there was a program in Fort Erie, and they would pre-screen the tenants. The tenants would come in. They're immigrants. They would be set up through like Ontario Works. So they were trying to find jobs, things like that. But again, it was a bit of a hassle, right? Because like these tenants, there's generally no credit history. They're paying with cash 9 times out of 10, or being subsidized through the government. And I didn't know how to properly set up a lease, right? So I'm kind of like, just driving there every month to collect cash. I'm like, I at that time I think I used like an ARIA form, like a realtor form for my lease.
Yeah.
It was terrible, right? But from there, I progressed. I ended up buying, I think it was the next year, I ended up buying it was an 8 bedroom rooming house that I converted
Mm.
into a triplex. So it was 8 bedrooms. It had 2 kitchens, I believe, and 4 bathrooms at the time, but it was like one big, like one large house. And nights and weekends, I demoed it and triplexed it. So 3 separate units, decks, kitchens, bathrooms, drywall, paint, like electrical, everything, right? Top to bottom. And again, a very big learning experience because like I did like 90% of the work myself. I did bring on some drywall guys, electricians, like some of the trades, right? I brought some of the
Yeah.
trades on, but like I did a lot of it myself. And then I joined a couple of different like real estate groups, right? And I started doing coaching at that time too, to kind of like to learn the processes of like how to properly screen, how to properly underwrite a deal, that type of thing, right? Eventually, and this is right, kind of like this is during COVID. This was like I guess 2020, 2019, I guess, 2019 when I bought it, and then 2020 when I'm trying to rent it out, right? So now all of a sudden, I got it finished, but I'm trying to deal with like showing tenant showings during COVID, right? Which
Yeah.
was a different animal, right? I'm like, what did I get myself into here?
Yeah.
But that was ended up getting it filled. Had a bit of turnover over the years, but that property has paid dividends from day one. That property has paid dividends. So I was able to completely refinance all of my capital out of it plus extra, and it cash flows very, very well at this point. And then plus like quite a bit of appreciation, right? So it's that property has done really well. And I forgot about this as well, but during that time I got married. I don't know how I forgot that, but I got married. My wife had a single family home in St. Catharines that she was living in. And when we moved in together, we rented that out as well. So that became another real rental in our portfolio. That was a nice single family at the time. You could make a single family cash flow somehow. It did cash flow when we rented it out, and
Yeah.
that was another property we added to the portfolio right around the same time.
What a unique transformation, though. So you took a sort of a rooming house and a house with 8 bedrooms, and you decided, you know what? I think this would work as a triplex. Quite the transformation, and understandably so. When you're getting into something where there's a massive transformation to it, usually there's a lot more equity that you're getting into. There's a lot of sweat equity that you're putting in. The upside to that is, you're usually able to pull more money out if you're doing a bar, and
Mhm.
then ideally cash flows. That's not always possible, but in this case, you creating 3 units where there was, one. Now, I mean, the argument could be said that if you're renting it out by the room, maybe you'd get more, but it's a different ball game. It's more management intensive. It's
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
that's a completely different ballgame. So, one of the, I guess, central principles that I do my real estate investments through is I try to find a like I have an ideal tenant avatar, right? And I try to
Yeah.
find them a property. If you're using it as a rooming house, what kind of tenant do you think you're going to get in a rooming house, right?
100%.
It Not
Yeah.
a very good tenant. They're going to be
Yeah.
transient. They're likely going to be maybe some social economic issues. It's likely not going to be a great investment strategy. There's going to be a lot more hands-on management. Could you make more money? Probably,
Yeah.
probably if your tenant. if your tenant issues, you don't have a lot of tenant issues. But the way I looked at it, the way I set it up was for families, right? So it ended up being, it's a large triplex. There was a 4 bedroom, 2 level. One of the units is 4 bedrooms, 2 levels, 2 bathrooms, main floor laundry, with a
Mm,
basement, and then I have two-bedroom units in there as well. It's set up for family, and it's set up for working class Canadians that are going to be long term good tenants. And like, here we are, let's call it 6 years later, and I haven't had a single issue in the property. It's been amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
it's you gotta, yeah, like that's the way I do it. Like, I'm sure there are people that operate rooming houses, and I'm sure they do well. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, 100%. No, I fully agree with that. That would never be a strategy I would pursue because one thing you mentioned that I want to highlight is, starting with the tenant profile in mind, right?
Sure.
And the way I see it is when people are running the numbers, you're looking at the pro forma, which is just a snapshot in time. It doesn't tell you the actual performance of a property. What you don't get to see is the turnover, you know, yes, you could account for a bit of vacancy, contingency there, but you don't see the turnover and you don't see, the repairs that need to happen in between. There's a bunch of things. You don't see the time commitment that it takes, which is vastly different as you start increasing the amount of tenants that you have, individual tenants that you have,
Absolutely.
right? So all of
Yeah.
those are factors. So no, I definitely think it's the smarter play. Now, how do things progress from there? So, you and your wife got married, you got that additional rental, which worked out great that you have a single family that cash flows. That's just like, this
Yeah.
was my primary, and look, I'm renting it out and it cash flows. That day doesn't
Yeah.
happen very often. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's a nice
Yeah.
one because you could just keep that in the portfolio. How did things progress from there?
Yeah. Speaking of tenant profiles, I learned this lesson the hard way. Okay. So from there, I bought a fourplex in Niagara Falls. And I mean, I don't know if you want to get into horror stories here already, but
Yeah.
this was a horror story from day one. So it's funny, eh? So like pro forma shopping, right? We all like, you look at properties, whether they're on market or off market. You look at your income, you look at your expenses, and you look at, at the end of the day, there's got to be there's got to be cash on the table, right? And
Yeah.
you look at like, okay, how can I improve this property? Like, what can I do to increase your income, maybe decrease your expenses? In this case, I was pro forma shopping, and again, a lesson learned. Bought a fourplex in a not great area in Niagara Falls, purely based on numbers. So at the time, it was vacant except for the front unit. So 3 units, like decently renovated, looked great. Fourth unit was kind of a hoarder unit.
Mm.
And my play here, so the seller was basically had an eviction process started because of, fire issues and whatever. However, they were moving on and didn't want to see the process through. I looked at the documentation, sent it to my paralegal. She had a look at it. She said, "Yeah, likely you'd be able to continue the eviction process and move on and turn that unit over." Okay, well, that sounds good then. And like I said, the other 3 units were nice. Got it for a good deal at the time, and I thought, okay, well, let's close on this. So closed on it, and shortly after I closed, I found out that it was not, in fact, a fourplex. It was a triplex with an illegal basement unit. Okay, so there's your due diligence, right? I didn't contact the city. I didn't do my due diligence on the basement unit. I do now. I know that now. So it turned out it was a triplex, not a fourplex. And the so when I got my financing on the property, the bank told me that at the time, because it was vacant, except for the first front unit, they told me that they would give me 65% loan to value. So I had to put extra money down than what I was expecting. However, they said as soon as you fill the property, we can refinance it up to 80% loan to value. Like, okay, no problem. Short term, put more extra money down, I'll get my money out of there. Long story short, filled the units. On the first of the year, the basement unit stopped paying rent.
Ooh.
So now we're into a non-payment issue, right?
Yeah.
So now we're going down that rabbit hole. So didn't receive rent for about 8 months. Eventually she did the midnight move out, which is good. But at that time, during that time, interest rates were going up, right? So it became virtually impossible to refinance that 65% loan to value. Virtually impossible to refinance that out, right? So again, like long story short here, there's a lot of things that were happening with some of the back tenants that I had some sketchy people move in that weren't supposed to be there. Long story short, the place ended up burning down last
What?
year. So we had some tenant issues, and the we finally were about to clear it out, and so there was a tenant that moved in and was like we'd screened them, everything was fine. They started having payment issues, and they to help them out with their rent, they brought somebody in off the street, how to move into the basement. And when we found out, of course, we're trying to work with them, and they got in a fight, whatever happened, and they ended up burning the building to the ground. So all's well that ends well. It did end well. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got injured. We were able to exit it with, by the time insurance, the insurance payout came through, we sold the property as is. Like, it all turned out well, and we did well on the property. But there's a whole lot of lessons learned. So I mentioned this property specifically because these are the issues you can run into if you buy a property in a bad area purely based on numbers. Okay, so I
Yeah.
brought this up
Mm.
just to highlight the fact of how important it is to properly vet the properties that you buy and the areas that you buy in. So, like, yeah, big learning. Like, I learned a lot the hard way on that property. However, like I said, like, it all turned out well, which is good. But yeah, it was definitely like a university education and over a course of a couple of years there on that property. So, like, during that time too, I bought a duplex actually right beside the triplex that I had previously mentioned.
Yeah.
And at that time, it actually wasn't a duplex; it was a single family, and I duplexed it. So I had that going on as well. And so yeah, I had a lot of like moving parts going on at the same time because like right around that time as well, I bought a commercial building, and we took that and we rezoned it. It was kind of like a mixed use. It was commercial on the main floor and residential upstairs.
On the top, yeah.
And we rezoned it, took all residential, and put in a unit on the main floor, and with plans to put in two more units in the back garage area as well. So I had a lot going on at that time for sure, but that one property was a bit of a nightmare during that process. But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I love the fact that you highlight. I mean, firstly, the goal is to highlight wins, highlight behind the scenes systems and misconceptions, but also highlight some of those horror stories, right? It needs to be a balance. It can't
yeah.
all be sunshine and rainbows for people out there because it's not realistic. So I like giving a good balance. I love the fact that you highlighted that. And it's so, so true. Even when I'm working with, maybe call it newer investors or out of province investors here in Edmonton. And cash flow is your lifeline, right? You can't be cash flow negative and be doing this at scale. You're going to be underwater. But sometimes, they could get fixated on the highest cash flow in properties, and it's like, well, do you know where they're located and what
Mhm.
comes with it that's behind the scenes that you're not going to see when you're running your numbers? Again, it comes back to tenant profile. It's like, if that first step is tenant profile and you can figure out what type of tenants you want and what type of tenants you want to be working with and dealing with, that cuts out certain parts of the city. It cuts out certain neighborhoods where those tenants maybe wouldn't feel safe living there. It wouldn't be ideal for them, so they're not going to live there. So, okay, maybe I shouldn't be looking in those parts of the cities. It really just, that really dictates what property types, what locations, what amenities, all of those things that you should be looking for when you're building up your buy box as an investor as well. So,
Mhm.
no, 100%. But I'm curious. Do you even know what started the fire there? Did they figure that out?
Yeah, yeah. So it was the tenant like specifically burnt it down. Not on purpose, from what I understand. She got in a fight with her boyfriend and lit his clothes on fire. Um, yeah, so that was the story. But yeah,
Oh
so it
man.
just like I got a call at like 3 in the morning by the fire department. And like again, like I'm like skimming over the details here, all right? Like because like it had like a full like fire system, like the pull stations and all that. And like throughout the tenancy, this one tenant had been like just getting drunk and pulling the fire alarm, and like so I was getting fire department fines. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that was going on there, right? But anyways, I got a call at 3 a.m. from the fire department, and yeah, they're just like, yeah, so we have a fire at your property here in Niagara Falls. Like you need to come out. Okay, so get dressed middle of the night, like head out there, and like yeah, the place is like on fire, like fire coming out the roof, fire like up the side of the building. Yeah, that was the story. Like she got mad at her boyfriend, lit his clothes on fire, and this is like I'm talking like 3 weeks I think prior to the move out, because like, I had an eviction order for them, and I was like, yeah, it was like just like a few weeks prior to
Damn.
move out date. It just burnt her to the ground. So yeah, it was a lot of stress because like now there's like other tenants too that were decent tenants that had
Yeah.
to be relocated. Right now, I'm refunding last month's rent, and I'm just like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm trying to like deal with the tenants that were there, that were affected by this, and like trying to figure out like what my rights and responsibilities are here and what the tenants' rights and responsibilities are. Luckily, like I require tenant insurance, so
Yeah.
most of the tenants were able to get refunded
And
from
stuff.
their insurance company for their personal belongings and things like
Yeah.
that. So like that's again like, so if you ever, when you're trying to fill a place, and if a tenant are kind of like balks at getting tenant insurance, like this protects them. It doesn't
Yeah.
protect you.
Yeah.
Actually
100%.
it does protect you in a way. I shouldn't say that. It does protect you in a way, because if there's issues in if your tenant burns down your building, you can go back toward the tenant's insurance policy
I was
to
getting
help
into that. Yeah.
cover some of the things that maybe your insurance company doesn't cover. Whether there's a deductible, whatever, you can go after their insurance to help cover some of that stuff. But by and large, it not only protects you, it does protect the tenant as well. So I always bring that up if I have a tenant that's like, "Oh, why do I need insurance?" Well, let me tell you, in this case, this is what happened, and the people that did not have insurance were out of luck, right? And the people that had insurance got their things covered. So, um, yeah,
100%. 100%, man. Yeah. It's so true because the insurance covers two aspects of it. There's the liability portion and there's the contents portion. And the
sure,
contents covers their contents, and
sure.
then the liability portion, there's a lot of other aspects that can be covered in that, so that helps protect you as well. So yeah, I'd say it's a no-brainer. It's a must-have that every landlord ensures that their tenants actually have insurance. um and it wouldn't hurt occasionally just to check to make sure that they still have it and they haven't taken out insurance and then canceled. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's the issue, right? Because you can require tenant insurance and get them to send you confirmation, but there's nothing stopping them in 6 months
Yeah,
canceling it, right? Like, there's nothing to stop
exactly.
that, right? So the way I have it wrote up in my lease now, like now that I have a proper lease agreement, is that anytime I inquire about it, they have to send me confirmation. Right? So
Yeah.
I just yearly I reach out, hey, just want to ensure that you got confirmation on your insurance. Please send me, your page, like whatever it is, a one-page thing, their confirmation of your insurance, and I get it, right? Like it is a requirement and it's necessary.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I'm glad though that it worked out that everyone came out of it okay. Especially because
Yeah,
it's a multi-unit building. It's not just a single
of
family
course.
that's impacted by it. So I'm glad that all worked out in the end. But okay, we've highlighted some of the tenant side and specifically also linked to location side of those issues.
Right.
But given your experience, it's clear to see that you have experience when it comes to renovations and potentially working with maybe distressed property, sorry, or even just taking a property and completely converting it into something else to maybe get the highest and best use out of it.
Mhm,
when
absolutely.
you when you walk through a distressed property or a property that has potential to be completely converted, what tells you if there's actual value underneath the surface? Because here's the thing though, is two people could look at the same property and one can really see the value in the property, um, be creative in really seeing how I can make this seemingly bad deal or okay deal from the outside actually be this fantastic deal, and then and the other person just doesn't see any opportunity there. What are some things
Mhm.
that you're looking for?
Yeah, well, there's a lot, right? So that's a very big open-ended question.
It is, and it's a broad brush there, But maybe if you break it down to like some framework and fundamentals that you're teasing out to try and be creative to see like where's the opportunity. Because yes, you're absolutely right, depending on the property type, like taking commercial and deciding, you know what, we're going to convert this into a full
Right.
residential, or you know, I
Yeah.
mean the most basic one, taking a single family home and saying, hey, I'm going to add a legal suite in the basement.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
purely, you know, that's fairly standard.
Yeah.
Taking 8 rooms and decide I'm going to make a triplex out of it, that's a little bit more creative, you know. But what are
Yeah.
some fundamentals that you think that you do well on that aspect? And
Yeah.
then, you know, just that aside, what are you looking for to see if a property has potential?
Yeah. Most like so the every property is set up differently, number one.
Yeah.
And the properties that have potential are ones that are already set up with like separate entrances, right? So okay,
Mm.
let's just take a single family home, for example, right? This is like very clear cut. So if you have, a front door, you walk in and you got a kitchen, bathroom, living room, living space. On the outside, you have a separate entrance that goes into the basement.
Yeah.
That's very, very easy to see how you could separate that into two units, right? And then obviously you have to look at ceiling heights for your building code and things like that. Very easy to separate those types of units, right? The triplex example that I took 8 rooms and moved it in and turned it into a triplex. It already had three separate entrances. It had three clear kind of like boundaries as to where you might be able to
Mm.
separate this building into three parts.
Yeah.
It was already kind of like designed in a way that you could do that. So the commercial building that we turned into residential, that was in an area that doesn't have a lot of commercial potential, right? It was kind of in a more
Got it.
residential area. It was an old grocery store that probably hadn't been in operation for 40 years. So,
Yeah.
like I said, there was a big, like, open main floor area. You walk in the front doors, like big bay windows, like kind of like, you walk in and there's like it's just open. And then there's a bathroom off to one side in the back. And then there's kind of like a clear separate area where there's an outdoor entrance that kind of goes down to the basement. And then there's another door where it kind of opens up into a garage area. And there's also a door from the outside with a set of staircase that goes upstairs into the upstairs unit. So, like, very kind of like clear cut as to how you might be able to separate these things.
Yeah.
It was already like the bones are there, right? It's just a matter of putting up some walls and separating things and renovating things and not really doing a whole ton of like massive structural changes. Yeah, there
Yes.
might be some load bearing walls you got to knock out here and there, but by and large, the building itself dictates your strategy. And again, in that commercial building, there's like a garage area, the big garage door. No, I'm not gonna like, have people walk through a garage door. I'm gonna brick that in. I'm gonna close that in, frame it in, and
Yeah.
use the man door as their entrance, and then separate. Just build a firewall in between that area and the next unit. Like all these buildings, they have their yeah they dictate how what you're gonna do, right? Essentially, and it also helps to have a good designer too. Like I'm a creative guy, I think, but everybody has a different idea when they walk into a building.
Yeah.
So I have people on my team, right? Designers who kind of come out when I have a good idea of what I want to do. Like I'll walk through a property. I'm like, okay, this is how I think I'm going to do it. I call in my designer. He'll come in and he can look at it. And then we just kind of like start workshopping ideas and taking measurements and making sure that what I want to do is doable. So like, yeah, it's not just me. I take a team approach to this thing, and then it's a matter of just crunching your numbers. Okay, what do I think? How much money do I think I got to put into this building? What do I think it's going to, refinance at when I'm done? What can I rent it out for? What's the best way to separate the utilities? Can I separate the gas and the hydro and put that, like separate them so the tenants are paying the bills? And then, yeah, just kind of like crunch your numbers and see what makes sense. Like a lot of times, the asking price doesn't justify,
Yeah.
so you have to like at the same you take your expenses and you work your way backward. Okay, this is how much I'm going to renovate it for. This is how much I can get for rent. These are my expenses on a monthly basis. This is what I need to buy it for. you should work your way back to come up with a purchase price.
100%. Yeah. 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 That's the approach I have to take. And then just know that whatever it's being listed for or whatever they advertise in the selling price for doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy it at that price point, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
so, you have a lot of, first I want to highlight the fact that you rely on a team, because I feel like that's the main theme for anyone who's even just slightly successful in real estate. You don't really get there just doing it all by yourself.
Oh,
It's a collaborative sport. That's really what real estate is. So I love the fact that you highlighted that, because then everyone gets to work on their area of expertise, and together you're able to have a whole lot more leverage and competitive advantage in your market. So that's the one thing. But you have you've got into various different projects. So, you have well-rounded experience. Now, looking back on all of this, is there anything you would have done differently? I mean, maybe let's exclude the
yeah,
anomaly there. But
yeah.
everything else, is there anything you would have done differently? Are there any potential projects that you took on that you're like, maybe the time commitment to that wasn't necessarily worth it? Going back, I probably wouldn't do the same thing. Or, yeah, are there any takeaways from that you might change if you were to redo that?
Honestly, already, other than the fire property, honestly, I don't think I would really change anything. Would I do the same thing now that I did then? Absolutely not. But it's that process, it's that learning process that sets you up for the future, right?
100%.
At the like now, I would not buy a triplex that I had to go collect cash rent for every month.
Yeah,
Like that makes no sense, right? I would not work on a project 100% myself, like with that rooming house, like so that 8 bedroom. I would not spend my entire time like working on that project myself. It doesn't make sense. But it's those processes and making those mistakes and going through those trials, going through those issues, right? And learning things just by doing that sets you up for the future, I think. And
yeah,
like it's very good to learn from other people's mistakes, and I think I have done that, but it doesn't really hit home until you go through some of those issues yourself, and then you're like, "Oh, okay, so that's why I wasn't supposed to do that," right?
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I would change anything. I don't think it like that. I think it's all part of the journey. It's all part of like becoming who you are, learning
yeah,
things. Like so, for as far as let's just go back to the basics. If you don't know how to screen a tenant, if you don't know how to fill your properties, if you don't know how to renovate your property, I mean, and I'm not talking like fully know how to renovate a property, but if you don't understand the basics that goes into a renovation, how do you expect to be able to manage a property manager, look at a tenant report and understand what's good and what's bad, look at an area and understand like this is maybe a good area or a bad area. It's very hard to manage these things if you don't actually have any practical hands-on experience. That's the way I look at it. So again, yeah, I would probably wouldn't change anything, but I would do a lot different.
100%. No, I get that. And yeah, for the most part, I I was thinking about it more from a what would you do different aspect, but then you also have to take into consideration you at a different phase right now than you were when you first got started, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And you kind of have to start at that initial point where you just don't have all the systems in place. You don't have, the entire team and support structure in place, and you just have to go through that. And I think there's two different approaches to it, and both work. But real estate is a business, and this is a common theme in business in general. When you're getting started out, you are a generalist, not really a specialist. So you're
Absolutely.
wearing many hats, you're doing many different roles within the business, and as you start to scale, you start getting out of those positions and you start getting people into some of those supporting roles, and then you can narrow down your focus and where you spend your time and your expertise, and then you could really move the needle there while having leverage in all those other roles. There are other people, of course, that from the get-go, whether it's in a business or whether it's on the real estate side, that just choose to automatically outsource things. They're like, hey, I'm not handy. I have no idea how to do renovations. I'm just going to outsource that. And then maybe you get burnt a few times not working with the right people, or you luck out, you get a good referral and this person's just been great. And there you go to, same on the property management side, like I've
Yeah.
seen that and I've seen it work as well. I don't think there's
Yeah.
a right or wrong path, but you're absolutely right. When it comes to real estate, it's a business. And a lot of people have that misconception maybe when they're getting started and they don't treat it like such, but it is a
Hmm.
business and you
Yeah.
wearing a bunch of hats and you're outsourcing it and you're gaining the leverage that way and you're building up your
Yeah.
team over time. So no, I fully agree with all of that. And maybe I should have phrased the question better, because ultimately there shouldn't be anything really that you're changing, because it's all led you to the path that you're on and gotten you to become the person you need to be to where you are.
Hmm.
But, looking back, there's always things that, like, if I were to do that now, I could do things a little bit more efficiently. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. Yeah,
maybe I
for
wouldn't do
sure.
that because I'd be able to get a higher ROI year, or maybe
For sure.
that would be the longer way to get to where I want to get to, essentially. Any of those, like, hindsights, like, okay, I come across that deal now, this is how I'm doing it differently.
Yeah. So, first of all, I want to just commend you on that. That you're 100% right with that. Like, there are a lot of people that do well by partnering with an active partner,
Yeah,
and they like and do passive investments. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a completely different strategy. And again, there's no right and no wrong way to do it. It's a
yeah,
matter of how involved you want to be in your investments, right?
yeah,
I'm a hands-on guy. I like being involved, right? And so for my path, that's what made sense. Other people may not have the time or the experience or even the desire to have the the experience. They just want to park their money somewhere and have it do well, right?
yeah,
And there's lots of different ways you can do that, whether it's, joint venture, whether it's private lending, whether it's, putting your money into syndication. Like there's many different ways you can go about that. Um, in my case, I wanted to be hands-on and I wanted to learn things by doing, right? So I guess to circle back, one thing that I would have done different, or I should have done differently, is I should have got coaching earlier, and I should have
yeah,
joined real estate groups earlier to gain some of that experience from people that have been doing it longer, right?
yes.
Rather than trying to make it up, and learning things the hard way, I should have joined some of those groups earlier and started networking and learning from experienced people. That is one thing that I definitely should have done earlier in my journey.
Yeah, 100%. Because that just helps you sort of fast track. It helps you shorten that shorten the journey, because it helps you eliminate some potential mistakes. Also, just in terms of referrals, for finding this team that you're going to build around you, because that's really what you're doing when you get started in real estate, is you slowly building your support system. You finding good contractor, you finding, if you're going to outsource the property management, a good property manager, you finding a good lawyer, a good accountant, a good realtor,
Mhm.
like all a good mortgage broker, all of these different pieces. And sure, you can find someone off of Google, plain old Google, but the odds of something going wrong are way higher, because just because someone can get ranked with their SEO searches, it doesn't necessarily
For
mean
sure.
they're the best person for the job. So
For sure.
being in that community definitely helps you with that aspect, and then a bunch of other aspects, like you hear what people are doing, what to avoid, some do's, some don'ts, and then you just have other people to bounce ideas off of, right? You don't want to go
Yeah.
to your high school friends that have no interest in real estate and get their opinion about real estate
Mhm.
investing if they're not doing this, right? So no, I fully agree with
Exactly.
that. Absolutely. Like that's something that people should try and get into as soon as possible. Build that community, build that network. You get access to potential deals, potential collaboration, partnerships. There's just a bunch of pros that come to that. So
Yeah, and like that opens up like different avenues too, right? So like there's a lot of people that invest in different areas, and maybe some areas were
yeah,
better than the areas that I invested in, right? Like
yeah,
and without that network of people and different ideas and different ways of doing things, yeah, maybe my time would have been better used, let's say, just for example, buying a student rental somewhere like, in Waterloo. at the time. Like maybe
Yeah.
my capital would have been better spent there rather than buying a triplex in Fort Erie. And it very well could have been, but I don't, I wouldn't have known that at the time because that wasn't even on my radar. Right. Um, and like some of those different, like building your team, right? So like, just like you said, you get referrals from people within your network. I went through, I don't know how many different realtors, like different lawyers, different accountants. There's so many people that I went through over the course of the last, like when I started over the course of the first couple of years that, yeah, that I could have short tracked that. I really could have short tracked that by joining a community and getting referrals and working with investment focused realtors, investment focused
Yeah.
brokers, investment focused people like for accounting and all that stuff, right? Like it makes a huge difference.
Oh, it absolutely does. One of my mentors says the most expensive thing is a cheap accountant. And it's so true. I think in with regards to all of your support system or power team members, whatever you want to call them, is not all of them are created equally. Not all realtors are created equally. Not all lawyers are created equally. And it's finding ones that really thrive in your industry, in the real estate side of things. And yeah, that's the quickest way to just short track that. Now, we've sort of gone through your journey to this point. Like going forward, like when you finding deals, you're looking to underwrite them. You've already broken down some of what that process looks like. You'd walk the property, you get your designer in, and you're running your numbers, you're working backwards while you're underwriting the property. Um, let's just see. Let's say, for example, there's what you're trying to do is maybe a little bit unique, and you're like, you know what? There's limited comps. What do you do in a situation like that?
Yeah, limited comps. That is something I run into all the time, man. Um, it's it's your best guess at that point, right? You try to find something, and maybe your comp is, I don't know, 3 municipalities over.
Yeah,
You just kind of have to. So again, I look at my income and my expenses, and I do it off cash flow. Comps don't necessarily, like, comps are important if you're trying to refinance, your capital back out, which again we are, right? But I try to be realistic with those comps. And sometimes it comes down to just meeting the appraiser on site and just kind of talking through everything that you've done and why you expect the valuation that you want. And now listen, a lot of appraisers don't like you like pointing them in the direction that you think they should be going.
yeah,
But the appraisers also are, like, they have a job to do and they have to be very impartial because essentially they're working for the bank. They're not working for you. But if you're able to at least give them an idea, not tell them how to do their job, but give them an idea of, like, the work that went into it and everything that you've done and the value that you've created in the building. A lot of times I've had success. The appraiser kind of comes back and, like, you don't see the reports generally. They go to the mortgage broker, but the appraiser will come back with a decent value if you're able to show them what you've done to the property and why you think it should be valued a certain way, right? Yeah, the comps are hard for sure.
100%. No, but you're absolutely right on that. Is it really becomes more important if you're trying to refinance it, because otherwise you're keeping it as a rental. You know, the value is not that important if you're holding it long term anyway, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
so you kind of sorted there if you don't know exactly where it's going to be. But yes, if you are getting an appraisal done, I think there's a good essence of people skills that go into that, because
for
again,
sure.
no one wants to be told how to do their job, so you don't want to
Yeah,
be that. You don't want to kind of piss them off kind of thing. You rather want to, again, highlight, this is what I've done, these were some of the things I was thinking on why this might help with the value, and maybe highlight potential spots that may be overlooked when they're crunching their numbers. So
Mhm.
no, I love that. That's really, really sound advice. Now, let's say you got a property under contract, you close on the property, you start with the rehab and everything, and of course there's always that where things pop up after the fact, right? There's the unknown. You start opening things up and more things reveal themselves, right? Now
For sure.
you want to be conservative when you run your numbers and,
Sure.
have some contingencies. But when the numbers start getting tight, what what do you find gets cut first, and then what's like absolutely not, we're not cutting on this, whether it's in terms of maybe quality of the reno you were going to do, or just like optional extras that you're like, you know what, maybe we won't do that or add that in.
Yeah. So first of all, again, like these are long-term investments. It's completely different if you're flipping. If you want to do a flip, like you need
100%.
to see your money out at the end of your flip, right? When it comes to long-term investments, it's not imperative, and it's actually sometimes rare to find something that you can completely, refinance all of your capital out and move
Oh
on
yeah.
and have it still cash flow, like, that's rare at this
Yeah.
point. Maybe not going back 5, 10 years, but at this point where the values are now, it is rare to be able to do that. A perfect burr, right?
Yeah.
Um, so what do I cut first? Honestly, maybe some finishings. I don't cheap out on quality. I'm not gonna cheap out on anything as far as like you want to separate your electrical, right? You want to have
Oh yeah.
different meters for every unit. I don't cheap out on the bones. You know what? Yeah, you could use a bit of a cheaper floor. You could, I a lot of times, sometimes it's like, okay, do I get a custom kitchen or do I, go to Home Depot and get a Home Depot kitchen? And maybe, you can change some of that stuff in the future if you need to. But I always try to price the finishings and the quality of the unit to, again, it comes back to the tenant profile,
Tenant.
right?
Yeah.
If I'm doing a one bedroom upper basement apartment, it doesn't have to have, quartz countertops, right? It doesn't have to have like high end finishings. So you gotta be careful that you don't over renovate, but you also want it to look fresh, clean, bright, and have the bones there so that, hey, maybe in 10 years, maybe I want to redo the kitchen and put in a nice quality kitchen with coarse countertops. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it'll never make sense in a rental. So you just have to make sure you don't over renovate for sure.
100%. I love the fact that you mentioned that, because you're absolutely right. The strategy makes a big difference to your decision making. If it's a flip, you need to be renovating to the comparables. You don't want to over renovate
Sure.
and you're leaving money on
Yeah.
the table. You don't want to under renovate and think you're going to get the same ARV, because you're just not going to get that same after repair value. It's your numbers are going to come in lower. When it's a rental, there's a different lens that you're looking at it through. Is like, if you plan on holding this long term, you want longevity out of what you're doing. That's ideally what you're aiming for. And then the tenant profile. And I love the fact that you mentioned that, because I feel like it definitely gets overlooked. You think of it as just a building, and you think of it as, what do I like, and I want to make this look good for myself. But it comes back to the tenant profile, because you're not living there. So what's the tenant profile like? Maybe what are the rental comps looking like as well?
For sure.
What are some things that are worth including, and what are other things that aren't as important to my tenants? So I
Mhm.
love that, because you need to change the lens on which you view that. So fantastic answer. Um, What's a Are there any renovation mistakes that you've done in the past that you've maybe completely shifted or eliminated now?
Renovation mistakes. I mean, there's always mistakes, right? There's every time it's just a
Never
matter of how
perfect.
you deal with those mistakes. A lot of
100%.
times too, it's like you don't know what's behind the walls. Nobody has X-ray vision, right? I guess the biggest mistake would have been just maybe not leaving a large enough contingency.
Mm,
Renovations do go over at times. You might not realize that you need to re-insulate. You might not realize that, oh crap, there's knob and tube here or something. Like you sometimes you just don't see everything. I think probably the biggest mistake was earlier on not being as diligent as I should have been on the due diligence phase, right? On when you're walking
yeah.
through, looking at everything and coming up with your numbers is just not budgeting maybe enough for that contingency, those things that you just don't see when you walk through, right? And then, yeah, of course, you get into overruns and things like that. And then maybe you don't, when you refinance it, you might not get out quite as much as you had hoped. But again, these are long term investments and nothing is, you know, there's no mistake that can't be rectified over time. So yeah, I wouldn't say like anything like super major, more just on the budgeting and due diligence side for sure.
100%. Yeah, and I think that's a common one, right? Like
Yeah.
even when you're running the numbers, I find the variable with the biggest sort of variance in predicting is always the rehab side. Or not always, but for the most part, right? It's the renovation costs, right? It's a lot easier to predict the after repair value. Again, comps can be a bit challenging at certain times, and then there it's also a little bit of a shot in the dark. But for the most part, like everything else is pretty easy to gauge. Rental rates pretty easy to gauge, but on the rehab side, it's tough. And you'll find that you could get three different contractors out to give you quotes, and they'll all vary drastically. And rightfully so, because there's difference in the quality of materials used,
For sure.
and there's the unknowns that just pop up, once you start doing the work. And so there's just so many factors to it. So 100%, I fully agree with you. That's the honest, truthful answer right there. Now, question for you. You've done this a few times, and how you started out versus how you do it now is completely different. You've built systems, you've built team members, you have procedures in place. What do you think separates a good operator from a great one when it comes to distressed real estate or taking projects and completely converting them?
A good operator versus a great operator. I think again it comes down to your team, man. So everybody can look at the same project and view it completely differently. I think a great operator just has that plan in place before they begin and relies on the team members to do the job that they're hired for. The people that are too involved sometimes, how should I put this? They slow the process down, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
you have to trust the people that are in the positions. They're in the position for a reason, right? So, I mean, obviously, team members change over time, right?
yeah.
But once you find a good contractor, once you find a good realtor, once you find a good lawyer, once you find a good property manager, you have to trust those professionals to do the job that you hired them for. You have to, of course, keep tabs on everything and make sure it goes well. But if an owner or an operator is in there talking to the contractor and be like, okay, well, why are you doing it this way? Maybe you should do it this way. What about this? What about that? A lot of times, like if you're indecisive and you don't allow your team members to do the job that they're there for, it can slow the process down. It can make the process more expensive. Just do what you're good at and let your team members do what they're good at. And that ship is able to sail smoothly and you're able to rinse and repeat and keep moving forward for sure.
Damn, John, that was a fantastic answer, man. Like, I don't know if you have a mic there, but you should do a mic drop. Like, I'm serious. I know that, like, even from personal experience, man. So, I'm a realtor in Edmonton. 90% of my clients are investors. And I've seen this working with investors myself, being on the other end of the transaction, working with them. And they may be seasoned or maybe they're not. But I've even seen with seasoned investors where they hold on and almost try and micromanage too much to
Yeah,
the point where I've been like, hey, maybe I'm not the right fit for you. And it's
right.
actually ended up that working out that we've done one or two deals and they completely change who they are
Yeah,
because they build
yeah,
trust, and which is understandably so. But
yeah,
then you really get to see them shine is when they have trust in their power team members because they've seen the competence that they have. They've seen that they high integrity, trustworthy team members. So now it's like,
hmm,
you know what? I can actually offload this onto you and
yeah,
trust and know that you're going to do your thing. You're good at what you do. You trustworthy. You're not gonna mess things up for me. You have my best interest at heart. You do that, and I'll focus on what I need to focus on, and then you really see them shine. And then yeah, then things really move. But you do need to have competent and trustworthy people as power team members,
exactly.
right? Those are the key ingredients to actually making that work, or else you get
For
burnt.
sure.
So understandably so.
Yeah, I mean, like every opera, like you're spending money and you're spending a significant amount of money, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, I like it. It comes with the territory that you're going to be a little bit like, maybe a little bit overbearing at first until you actually
yeah,
build that trust, like you said, right? And I
yeah.
understand that, but yeah, it's a matter of finding those good people.
Yeah.
And that comes through referrals 9 times out of 10, right?
Oh
Finding
yeah.
those good people that you can trust and letting them do what they're there for sure.
100%, man. Oh, these have been great answers. Okay, so let's move on to rapid fire round of questions. So just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Let's have fun with it. Just quick answers, okay?
Sure. Yeah, let's go.
10 years from now, what's one skill you hope you would have completely mastered?
Raising capital.
Oh man, that's one of the most important, if not
Oh
the
man,
most
it's
important.
so tough. That's so tough. I'm learning as I go, but yeah, raising capital is a skill that I'm working on currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I want to get into that a little bit more in a minute. But yeah, go ahead.
100%. It's honestly, yeah, I think it's most people's sticking points. But yeah, absolutely, man. It's a super important one. What's one upgrade that will always boost tenant quality?
Ooh, tenant quality. Good kitchen.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. If you had to start again with $0, where would you go first? Oh, sorry. Yeah, where would you go first?
Where would I go first? Like as far as area or
Yeah, yeah. Area, like strategy, property type, whatever. Like what would the strategy be? Rather, I'll put it that way.
with zero money? I think. Oh, geez. Okay, so probably again, I would with zero money, I would be raising capital and doing a BERT, something quick or a flip. Actually, let's change that to a flip. We'll do a flip.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. What's one risk you take again, even knowing that it didn't work out?
A
The fire
risk that
home.
didn't Yeah, the fire home. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? I would take yeah, I would take that risk again. Only because of the lessons I learned. You know what? I made money and I learned a lot. So hey, it was worth it.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If before we wrap this up, if you quickly wanted to touch back on the raising capital thing, because absolutely it's probably, in my opinion, the most important skill, raising capital. I mean, I do think that it ties into subcategories that are relationship building and the art of sales and influence, because those are
Mhm.
important skills, but they almost tie in together. But yeah, raising capital is a big one. It's a big sticking point for people, and it's that big thing that once you're able to really get it, that
Mhm.
your ability to scale drastically improves. Yeah. And if you want to have some final comments on that there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Moving forward, my partner and I are looking at starting to go a little bit bigger. So over the last bunch of years, like we talked about, I've gained a fair amount of experience rehabbing properties and looking at undervalued buildings. So my partner and I are looking at potentially like getting into some larger multifamily
Got
moving
it.
forward. And there's a couple of different innovative ideas that we are kind of workshopping together to work on these buildings. Part of that is going through like with solar panels and doing renewable energy. And the other thing, funny enough, is trying to marry the concept of digital scarcity versus physical real estate scarcity. I've been talking a lot with some operators in the area and also, overseas, and it's becoming more and more clear to me that freedom is built through finding opportunities that are scarce. And that it's one of the main reasons why real estate has done well. It's one of the main reasons why, like there's like Bitcoin has done well and
Yeah.
all these digital
Yeah.
things. Like it's one of those things. Finding that scarcity is super important. So we've been workshopping a few ideas. One of them is implementing um, Bitcoin miners into the heating system of your buildings of a building. So essentially,
Hmm.
what you can do is use solar panels to offset your electricity costs of the building as well as a Bitcoin miner, say, and use the heat from the miner to actually heat the domestic hot water system and the radiator system within a building. At the same time, create a digital scarcity through your through mining Bitcoin. So it's a matter of marrying those two concepts into one building, and we're coming up with a prototype. I've got several buildings in my portfolio that I can implement this into, and taking that to scale.
Yeah.
What does the future look like? I'm not 100% sure yet, but If that interests you, or if you know anybody who that might interest, please reach out. Like, I'd love to have a conversation and see where this goes.
I'm curious though. So do you know yet what like that upfront cost looks like so that you could actually calculate to see this is the upfront investment and then this is what the return would be like on the mining side? I know it's not as lucrative as it once was before, but
100%.
there's that, and then there's the offset of the cost, like on the heating side as well. I'm just curious on what that looks like. And then also I've seen, I don't know, I think I saw a post about this. I don't really know if it's been implemented yet. Maybe it is, like where they're tying in ownership into into crypto, like on the investing side, into like a crypto token or crypto coin, and the ownership being done that way. I don't really know if
Yeah,
it's
so
it's being put in.
tokenization, that's going a whole nother route.
Yeah,
I'm not super interested in tokenization at this point. It is, I know some guys that are actually doing that, but I'm not going down that rabbit hole right now. And like, this could become a whole nother podcast episode about it.
100%.
But and maybe we should discuss this a little bit more in depth. But as far as the way I'm looking at this, the building is the investment. Okay. So
Yeah,
it starts with a good qualifying investable building, right? And that's the basis of the underlying fundamental thing that we're putting our money into is the building. And without that building, it would be a no-go. So we're not relying on
100%.
solar panels. We're not relying on crypto mining. We're not relying on any of that to make this make sense. So that's number one. So the game plan is find an investable opportunity, and then how can we boost the NOI, right? So now
Yeah,
we're talking larger scale. That we're not talking about comps anymore. We're talking about boosting the NOI
yeah,
to create value in a building, and an NOI, net operating income, for those that
yeah,
weren't familiar. So the solar panels, and I just had a conversation with the solar panel guy today. The solar panels actually make a lot of sense, regardless of whether you do, crypto mining at all or not.
yeah,
And
yeah.
when I say crypto, I'm really only talking about Bitcoin. There's
Bitcoin,
no other
exactly.
crypto that I would ever, put my money in, anything like that, right? But so the solar panels themselves generally have a 4 to 7 year payback. So essentially, and there's a lot of grants. So
Yeah,
you can install these solar panels on the roof of the building, and they're generally around basically 3 cents a kilowatt hour for cost. Okay. And that's over a 25-year period. So the average cost of your electricity, if you buy it from your utility, is around, depends where you're at, but it's around 14 cents a kilowatt hour, right? So solar panels is 3 cents a kilowatt hour. If generally, like I said, that savings over time, you can either sell back to your tenants, you can use it to, you know, just increase your net operating income and
yeah,
offset the utility costs. So, like I said, about a 4 to 7 year payback period on your solar panels. Now, of course, you have to size your panels appropriately to the building, right? To your
yes.
usage, right? And there's a bunch of different ways you can get into that through net metering or whatever, but that can be, like, again, a whole nother episode. But the idea is to take that stranded energy, the energy that the sunlight uses, that the sunlight creates, take that stranded energy and convert it into a usable asset, right? And in this case, if your building does not use all the power that you're able to generate, you can funnel that towards a Bitcoin miner that not only creates small amounts of income, but it also, the byproduct of the mining, can offset some of your heating costs depending on how things are set up. So on the mining side, I think your question earlier was, does it make sense from a monetary perspective?
Yeah,
And that is something that we're going down, like the engineering route, and trying to assess. And again, I think it's going to come down to a pilot project, a smaller pilot project, on my own dime, of course, to make sure that that works. But again, the opportunity is not contingent on a mining rig. Like,
oh, 100%.
it's more just a way to create additional income and offset your expenses, right, at the same time, while supporting a decentralized currency, um, and with a more forward-thinking investment, right? And it is already being done in Europe. This isn't something that I made up. This is already being done in Europe to a small degree. And as far as I'm aware, this would be one of the first in Canada. So yeah, we're going down the
That's
rabbit hole.
pretty
We're
cool,
trying to
man.
figure it all out. There's a lot of moving parts, but it is something we're looking into.
That's pretty cool, man. No, I'm pretty big on the crypto side myself, though. But no, that's unique. I actually I love that idea. I want to see how it all pans out. So keep me posted on that, Jonathan. This has been an amazing episode, man. This has been a ton of fun. Tell me, for people listening out there, maybe they want to learn a little bit more about that, or just something you mentioned along the way that has them curious, or maybe they just want to follow along with your journey. Where's the best place for people to keep up with what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Beam Property Partners. I've got an email list as well, and my website, beampropertypartners.com, is a great place too to reach out. Yeah, you can always send me an email too at jon@beampropertypartners.com, and I can throw you on the email list. And yeah, we can go from there. There's many different roads we can go down here, and just yeah, I'm excited for the journey. And if anyone wants more information, please reach out.
Perfect. I'll leave all the links to follow John down in the show notes below. Definitely go see what he's up to. As you can hear, he's got some exciting things in the pipeline there. Reach out to him and keep the conversation going. But John, I want to say it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks for coming on and sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Elray.
To our listeners out there, if you're looking for more valuable insights, be sure to subscribe. Share this with someone who can benefit. And as always, keep investing smartly. Thank you for tuning in to the Wealth Through Real Estate Show. If you want to learn how to scale your real estate business through wholetailing and creative financing, then you don't want to miss my episode with Isaiah Henry. This is your host, Alray Noble, signing off.